You're listening to the Business Brain Food Podcast. This is episode number 128.
Welcome to the podcast that gives you direct access to the world's leading business building experts. Head to MaxMyProfit.com.au to catch up on past episodes, download your free business growth tools, and access show notes for every single episode. Now here's your host, Ben Futrell.
Well, g'day and welcome back to another episode of Business Brain Food. This, my friend, is the podcast that's 100% devoted to taking you and your business to the next level. And the good news is, doesn't matter whether you're brand new to this business thing, so maybe just scratching that entrepreneurial itch, or maybe like myself and you've been in business for a long, long time, there's always something new we can do to take our business to the next level. And as I said, today is absolutely no different. In fact, today, my God, you are going to be blown away. Today, I have a fellow coming on who's called Zeryab Cheema, and Zeryab is taking on Uber. Now, if you were going to get up in the morning and say, what company should I take on today? What what app should I build? And who should I take on head to head in trying to tap into a marketplace? I'm not sure Uber would be the one that would come to mind, but this young fellow, he's 20 years old. And this is, by the way, his second technology company. This young entrepreneur started his first business at 15. And I'm telling you now, you know what I heard in the 30-odd minutes that we were chatting, I heard courage and fearlessness. And I tell you what, those two things, if you can bottle them into any entrepreneur, amazing things can happen. And I think you're going to hear that. I just was amazed talking to young Zeryab about what it is he's doing and where he's going and his whole outlook on the way he thinks. And I think that a lot of, including myself, older business owners that have been around a long time can learn a lot from somebody like Zeryab because, he is learning the lessons, he's implementing them, and he's getting results. So we'll get him on the show very, very shortly. Before we do that, if this is your first time tuning into the Business Brain Food podcast, welcome along. So good to have you here. I don't know what took you so long. Episode 128 here. You've got a few to catch up on. Go back and listen to those. But certainly make sure you stay tuned in for this one because it is amazing. This one's awesome. I'm telling you now, I've started this new series where we get an insight into entrepreneurs. In the last, 12 episodes or so, I've had Angus Kennard come on from Kennard's. I've had Andrew Griffiths come on talk about his entrepreneurial journey. And now we've had Zeryab Cheema. And it's I'm seeing a few sort of consistencies in their themes, which, you're going to probably see as well as you listen through to these. But, go back and listen to those past episodes. If you're a regular listener, welcome back. And thanks once again for tuning in. Really appreciate you coming back week after week to listen in. And hopefully you're enjoying the content. If you are, and you probably know what I'm going to say next. If you are enjoying the show, please head across to the iTunes store and leave an honest review or rating. It really does help. I read them all, and it helps people that come across the show to decide whether or not the show is for them. The other thing that it does help me with is, I believe, the more ratings we have, the higher up in the rankings we are when people are searching for a business podcast. So you're actually going to help me help the show so I can help you. Does that make sense? Because what happens is the higher we are in the rankings, the more high-profile people contact us. We get about 2 requests a day, by the way, interview requests to come on the show now. I think they're learning that the Business Brain Food podcast is pretty popular. Thousands and thousands of downloads every month, and I couldn't have done it without you, so thank you for coming back. Alrighty. Well, we're just about into April. Happy Easter. And it's interesting that today we are talking to Zeryab, who has a business called Hop, or an app called Hop. And that's just coincidental. He should probably play on that and have people running around the city in giant bunny suits. If you listen, Zeryab, you can have that idea. You can cash in on that one. Now, Zeryab, at the age of 15, launched his first app called Taxi 24/7, which was an iPhone app to connect riders and drivers. And it was about, first of all, making it easier for people to catch a cab in Sydney, but it's ended up being used by the London black cab market. So 20,000 cabs in London are using that app. Shortly after that happening, he was featured across media, including things like 7 News, The Today Show, ABC 7:30, and he had support of all sorts of senior ministers, former Prime Minister Julia Gillard. He has conducted over $2.5 million of research and development with multinationals like PayPal, TeamSpeak, and Altoros. And now he is launching Hop, which is a new initiative that he's got to the Australian market with some major backers. Now, this young kid, 20 years old, is in his second round of capital raising since November 2016 for this business. It's about to launch. We don't find out the exact launch details, but I'm sure you'll hear about it when it comes to life. But for a 20-year-old to be doing such amazing things, I think you're going to really enjoy this interview. So, on that note, without any further delay, let's get Zeryab back onto the. Let's get him onto the podcast. Not what I'm saying, back onto it. Let's get Zeryab Cheema onto the podcast so you can have a listen to his story, and I'm sure you're going to walk away inspired.
Learn more to earn more.
So it's always exciting to get an entrepreneur onto the show that is doing something a little different, out of the box, and maybe trying to disrupt something that is huge. And so it's great to have Zeryab on the Business Brain Food podcast. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure, buddy. My absolute pleasure. Now, before we do get stuck into chatting about what it is you're doing and how you're taking on one of the world's giants in peer-to-peer transport, I want to ask you the question I ask all my guests, and that is for you to share something quirky about yourself.
It's time for something quirky. And now, something quirky.
Yeah, well, I'm very last minute. That's one thing about me. So it's very last minute doing everything I do. But yeah, it's just a habit that's now meant to change.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's face it, you're not far off being a teenager, are you? I mean, you're 20?
Exactly, yeah, that's right.
And when did you turn 20?
August last year.
Okay, yeah. Well, my son's nearly 20, and he's famous for being last minute. So it must be a trait of being that age. But it sounds like you want to work on it, eh?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's being on the edge. Being a risk taker is what most teenagers are. So I think that habit sort of flows into business as well. So handling that pressure, maybe it's a good thing at times, but sometimes a bad thing overall. So it does have to slowly change. But it's just one of the characteristics of being young.
Yeah, great stuff. Now, maybe tell people a bit about your story, because there's a lot of listeners out there that are probably confused. What? We've got a 20-year-old entrepreneur on this show. Tell us a bit about how you got involved in business, because I believe you started at 15.
That's absolutely right. So at the age of 15, my first project was Taxi 24/7. It was basically a taxi booking app meant to get you a ride in minutes. It was meant to be very easy. And around the time when apps were really growing, I thought that why don't I take a shot and try the market out and think there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of traveling that had to happen. There's a lot of trials and errors. But we sort of progressed from a very paper idea to something that was real life and working, and it changed a lot from what it was originally.
And what made you decide to create this first app? Is it just was it a school project, or was it something you're passionate about? Or
Yeah, I think it was after a TV show that's now phased out. So Channel 10, George Negus, basically he was advertising the fact that apps were going to be the next big thing, and that really intrigued me. And that's when I sort of stepped into that sphere of really just trying out an idea, which I didn't have much idea about.
Yeah. And so are you a programmer, or is it just that you've come up with an idea and gone, this would be an awesome thing to do?
Yeah, absolutely no tech background. So I think I'm more on the business side, the way I see it. But just the fact that I've been in the game since 15, you sort of learn the ins and outs from the tech side as well. So it's just good experience to have. But no, my sort of main specialization, the fact that I see it is more so from the business strategy side rather than the tech side.
Yeah, great stuff, which is a good strength to have if you're going to be in business, that's for sure. Yeah, so tell me, what does Taxi 24/7 do? What makes that app work well?
Yeah, so the original idea was meant to be just the ability to get a cab. It's a very simple idea. But I think the fact that you normally learn over business is that what your original idea intends to be is not what it turns out to do. So in this case, I did have to pivot a lot, and it ended up being a solution for black cabs to be able to take payments. So in London, there's about 20,000 or so black cabs that don't take card payments, they take cash only. And so changing that behavior was what Taxi 24/7 did. It transformed that into a payment solution, which is now used by the black cab drivers in London.
So you took an age-old habit of only collecting cash and turned,
Exactly.
and brought technology into the black cab.
Absolutely, and it's a big change. I mean, you're talking about an industry where people are really, when people are used to doing something the same way each and every day, and they've reached the age of, let's say, 40, 50 years old, which is the average age for black cab drivers, changing that habit was a massive part, and it took a lot of work, but finding the right team was the first part in what I did, and we just went from there.
And how does a 15-year-old convince 20,000 black cab drivers in London to take you seriously and to start using your app?
Well, it's not easy. It's all about leveraging off the right people. So I think early on, I did start pitching out, speaking at different events that I was invited to do so. And then from there, I met the right people who could give me some credibility, I think, at that stage. And then getting into the door was one thing I could do quite well. So I think getting myself, 5 or 10 minutes with some top ranking companies was one thing I could do. And I think that led me quite far by finding the right companies to leverage off an ID. And I think it's quite interesting when you find out that these large tech giants like to work with young individuals and really give it a shot.
Yeah, I'm seeing that a fair bit actually with a lot of the technologies. They tend to pick up the younger generation because you are the business of the future at the end of the day. So it makes sense to have you involved in developing something for the people that are going to be using it in the future that are growing into it, Yeah,
I think further to that though, I think it's more about the fact that if the individual, so let's say a 20 or 30-year-old or plus, just over 30, they have responsibilities of, let's say, a family or they're on their last sort of chain of leaving, let's say, a corporate role, now going into entrepreneurship, whereas a person under 20 doesn't have that sort of risk involved. They have less amount of risk, less amount of responsibilities on that end. They can try more things. They can fail a lot more without having to worry about the future because they still have a lot of time ahead of them. I think that's just the way I see it, but it could vary.
Yeah, but it's a great insight. And you're right there, right? At the age of 15, and I'm assuming you were still living at home at that stage?
I was, yep.
Yeah, so, your mum and dad are probably taking on all the responsibility, making sure the bills are paid and, and giving you that freedom to be able to go out and try. But having said that, though, you would have still been at school. Did being an entrepreneur and starting a company affect your school much?
It does. So I think juggling the time, really, I think time management is one of the hardest skills to learn. So, let's say you're at school 8 to 10 hours a day and then you're running your own company for the rest of the part. You're literally just doing round-the-clock days, so 24 hours up and go sort of thing. And it takes a lot of passion to keep just going at it, yeah.
And when you started Taxi 24/7, you're saying it was about making it easier to catch a cab. Did you ever in your wildest dreams have a vision that it was going to be as big as it ended up being, being used in London throughout 20,000 cabs?
Yeah, there's no point of there was no way I could guess that. There was absolutely no way. So I think it's very hard to predict where it was going to take me. But it was a very hard lesson to learn, though, because you develop something that doesn't actually fit into the market. You have to redevelop it constantly without having a revenue stream, with a lot of challenges going through school. So it takes a lot to just go through that process. But I just believed in one thing, which was just keep going and I'll get there somehow, and just keep going with the flow. I think keep changing and adapting until you get it right. Yeah,
it was a really great mindset, because I know a lot of people, when something doesn't work, instead of changing and adapting, sometimes they give up. Was there any time when you thought about giving up, when you wwent, this is all just too hard and I'm not finding a market for it?
Yeah, there's always going to be plenty of times that happens in any entrepreneur's journey, and it happened in mine as well. So I think there's plenty of thought process. Even till now, you have different things that make it so hard. You're on the edge. But I think you're just trying to say that to yourself as, what if I did give up? But the reality is that you're too far into it to give up. That's the way I see it. And I would never give up a project. Yeah,
great stuff. And now this has led you now to taking on one of the world's largest peer-to-peer, transport networks, which is Uber, with a new product or app called Hop. Tell us a bit about what led you on to then deciding to do that.
Yeah, I think the ride sharing, let's just say the global transportation market has a lot of gaps in it. That's quite clear. There's a lot of room for other players to step into. So when I saw that internationally there were different players stepping into that market and they were establishing a name for themselves, I think it led me to the thought that Australia was a dynamic market. And one of the biggest things in this sort of ride sharing or transportation sector is the drivers are the people that power these solutions. So switching between different platforms isn't as hard as it seems. So I thought introduce a nice platform for them to try out as the driver and make the offering attractive for customers, and then you have a winning solution in a market like Australia.
Yeah, now Uber has become widely accepted now. solution for people that want to get from A to B. There's no doubt about that. They've seen the number of drivers also that are getting involved in becoming drivers because it's an easy way to make some money on the side. And even though it's been regulated, I think, by the tax department, etc. now, there was a lot of noise about that early on and they couldn't go to the airport to pick people up. I think that's all changed. Do you think there is a space for more players in that market?
Yeah, I think let's just put things into context. The US market alone, let's just look at the US market. So there's about 4 players there at the moment. And one thing we're seeing is that drivers are switching between one platform and the other. I don't want to go into statistics too much, but I think in the US, for example, a driver on each ride-sharing platform is only on there for about 4 months. And what we forget in the Australian market is much of these drivers that are driving with ride-sharing platforms at the moment are actually former taxi drivers or first-time office workers, that sort of stuff. So is there a room in the market? Well, of course there is. If it's a better offering for drivers, then surely there would be room for drivers to then switch on to a new market. Companies like Uber have established an understanding of what ride sharing is, and they've done a lot of work. But globally, there's plenty of tech giants. There's Lyft, there's DiDi, there's Grab Taxi, there's Ola, which are all billion-dollar companies, all making their mark in each of the markets. So there's a big room. There's still, I think looking at stats recently, out of the 66,000 cab drivers that are driving 22,000 cabs in Australia, their work hasn't actually decreased in the last 6 to 12 months. That hasn't actually impacted them. So there's still a huge market for consumers. It's changing quite rapidly.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when you start looking at statistics to see all the noise the cabbies were making about these ride-sharing apps becoming available, and their work hasn't decreased. I did see something on that the other day because Uber's done a great job in teaching people why they should take some sort of public or ride-sharing service rather than drive themselves. Now, what's interesting, though, is you've decided to enter this market with Hop. What made you decide that was going to be your next move?
Yeah, I think it was just, everything was just lined up so well. I mean, look at the fact that we partnered up with a rental car company, which is one of the most established companies in the world, so Hertz, a 150-year-old company with 20,000 plus rental cars in Australia. The model was quite simple. Use existing resources in a different way. There's rental cars sitting around in Sydney and Melbourne and around Australia. Why not use those? Get a driver to drive those cars and make money instantly. So that sort of idea was something that's very different in this sort of market. So everything you make, you keep. 100% of fares go into your pocket. We initially, as we speak, we guarantee drivers an amount to be on the road. So we guarantee them $300 per 8 hours to be on the road each day. So that's how we attract our drivers, and it's not a hard play.
Yeah, great stuff. So tell us a bit about how Hop works, because you've just mentioned Hertz Rentals and using rental cars and drivers. I mean, they must be hiring these cars. So tell us a bit about how the model works.
Okay, let's look at it from driver's perspective first. So you rent a car through Hertz or through us. It's a Hertz vehicle that you normally get, brand new vehicle under 18 months, get on the road, start driving. Each car is branded in some way or form. At the moment, it's 2 car window flags, which stick up on either side. So you see a car, you start driving, obviously. It's up to you to drive for a day, 2 days, whatnot. You get initially guaranteed an amount to be on the road, so to reduce your risk of not making enough money on a new platform. And that's from a driver's perspective, and you keep 100% of all fares, no commission, unlike the other ride-sharing platforms which take 25 to 30% commission, none of that. Whereas from the customer's end, it's very basic and very simple. It's 40% cheaper than taxi, so it's the cheapest solution on the market, and brand new cars, and you can actually get a ride with and without the app itself.
Oh, okay. So you can see people with these flags on their cars and flag them down. Is that what you can do?
Yeah, I'm careful with the language itself, but yeah, that's effectively the model. But basically, the way it works is you provide your name, pick-up and drop-off destination, and your mobile number, and that effectively is a booking before you enter the vehicle. It's in the grey area of the law, to be fair, but it's what it is, right? So it makes it easy for consumers to get a ride without having to wait around, and that is truly disruptive. And that's what we're seeing right now is consumers are loving the fact that no need to even pull out your phone, get a ride on demand instantly, and that's where it gets taxi drivers quite upset that that's their last leg, which we are now taking off them.
Yeah, okay. And is your vision tell me a bit about your vision, because you've mentioned there about making it different to the other ride-sharing apps, but you also about disrupting an industry. So tell me, what is your vision? What's your purpose of doing this?
Yeah, so I think the focus isn't just on ride sharing. I think that's a very narrow focus from our end. It's mobility in general. So the fact that you can, as a consumer and as a rider, as a driver, to make it as easy as possible to do anything and everything when it relates to transportation. So let's just put into context. In the next 6 or so months, we want to introduce a system where you have cars parked on the road anywhere, and you have a swipe card. You're walking down the road, tap that card, get into the vehicle, start driving, and make money without even having to visit a location as a driver. So that instant behavior of being able to earn money on demand is very, very unique. I think other than the fact of that, we want to partner up, obviously, we're in talks with other companies in the delivery sector, in the droning sector, so we can actually make travel and transportation and delivery, be it food or packages, very, very seamless and easy. So I think rather than building new products, I like to really just leverage off existing players, and that's what we've done quite effectively in the past.
Wow, it's a pretty impressive move from you there, buddy. Zeryab, I tell you what, for a 20-year-old, you certainly, you're a long way ahead of a lot of 20-year-olds. I mean, my son still sits at home playing PlayStation. That's his effort on creativity. But it sounds like you're taking on the world, which is cool. Tell me a bit about the future of Hop. Where is it right now? I mean, it only started recently, isn't it? So it started November last year.
Yeah, so we raised capital last year, our first round of capital, stepped into the market, basically a bit of a pilot phase that we saw from doing free rides to really just getting that understanding with consumers. And even at the moment, we're still promoting and growing the solution. I think the next tab for us is when we close the second round of capital, which we are quite close to doing so. And it's a pretty big capital raise that we're doing. It validates the model. So basically, we were out there to validate this business model, and it has worked quite well for us. And now we'll see this stepping stone where you'll see a whole influx of partnerships coming out, including Sydney Airport being involved in different angles in the next few months.
Great stuff. Now, tell us a bit about this journey for you. What have been some of the key things you've learned, being young and jumping straight into this business world? What have been some of the key learnings?
I think to be fair, I think there's 3 simple lessons that I've sort of stuck to, or 3 simple points, which is passion, pivot, and persistence, right? So passion, you should always do what you love and if you believe in it. So when I was doing Taxi 24/7, it got to a stage where I knew that this is the extent, or this is the limit to the market fit, basically. So it doesn't really get me excited to make the next move. The next move for me was Hop, right? This was really exciting, and that's why I stepped into this. And then other than that, it's persistence, right? Keep going at it. It seems hard. You might run out of money. It happens. It's normal. But just being persistent with it is quite important. And then I think pivot is quite important as well, right? So if it's not working, change directions and it'll work, right? So if let's say Hop in the ride sharing space isn't as effective, we might be able to tweak a few things around to make it effective. There's always a way out of it. So I think that's those 3 sort of lessons I had to learn quite early on.
Yeah, great stuff. And what have been some of the things that happened that you didn't expect that may have frustrated you or slowed you down?
Yeah, I think from one angle, it had to be funding. So really the timing of funds is very hard to predict. The burn rate that you go on, the scaling. So I think time for me, I'm very time conscious now. So, if it's taking a week more than what it should take, then it gets me a bit sort of anxious. But now it's sort of fitting in and everything's sort of playing out. But funding was one thing that is hard to predict and hard to time and get right. It's something that is not in, I guess, the management or CEO's control. So, it's hard to sort of get by.
Yeah, and tell us a bit about the funding side, because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that are wondering, what are the steps and how does a 20-year-old go and get such a something like this funded?
Yeah, I think the first bit was just looking around within my network of people. So because I'd done the previous project, it gave me some credibility, and I knew how to sort of build and scale a company. So I think that gave me credibility as an individual. And then using my network, which was a guy named Andrew Morello, who's the winner of the Apprentice Australia, the first ever Apprentice Australia. He's a close friend and mentor, and now a board member. So he helped raise the funds along with a guy called Stuart Cook, who is the former CEO of Zamborero, the Mexican franchise chain. Those 2 guys basically sort of mapped out a plan of how we're going to be raising funds and just sticking to that valuation. So that's how we raised our first round, and now we've almost raised our second round of capital. But it's a massive, massive in-depth challenge, which has a lot of elements to it.
Yeah. So it's. Would you say it's one of the most time-consuming or brain-consuming parts of the business at this stage, whilst it's early on and you're trying to grow?
Yeah, I think most of the founders internationally, like we're talking, the Amazon founder Jeff Bezos said that it's a full-time role on its own. That's how in-depth funding is and intense it is. So you probably, if you're running a company, day-to-day operations, and you're raising capital, your hands are completely full.
Yeah, great stuff. Now, you mentioned earlier on when we first started chatting a bit about building the right team. That was how you sort of founded Taxis 24/7 and got that running. How important do you think it is for you to surround yourself but with the right people? Because you talked about Andrew Morello being a mentor there, and people helping you with funding. So, how important is building that team?
I think it's the most important thing. So I think if you don't have the right team, there's absolutely no point in even moving forward until you have the right team. So I think the right people, and when we say the right people, it's not going to happen overnight. You might have to go through rounds and rounds of people around you to find the right one. So someone who believes in the venture, and not just believes in it, but actually can stand by their word, and let's say you're going through a bit of a rough time, they can pour in capital from their own pocket just like you would. That's the true belief in a company. I think for me, Andrew Morello, Stuart Cook, those guys are two guys that I can count in my close network of people who can do that. But it takes some time to find the right people. I'd known Andrew for some time, for the last few years, but then we truly got into business just quite recently, and it's been a good relationship. But it will take some time. It will be trial and error, and you might get burnt a few times, but it's just part of the game.
Yeah. And what about yourself? Have you got a team of employees, or how are you, are you working crazy hours to make this happen?
Yeah, no, I mean, I learned early on that it's important to employ the right people to do the things that you can't do. So obviously there's things that I can't, count myself in doing. So that promotional staff on ground, driver coordination, project managers, if it's not my area of speciality, there's no point in me wasting time on that end. So I think there's people that can do it a lot better than I can. So I think employing people, we've done that. So we've created a small team of people between, let's say, 6 or 7 people at the moment, the core team that grow the business in the company as we speak. And we're just, constantly hiring and constantly growing, but not at a rate that's unsustainable. It's important to just keep a very sustainable growth rate.
And so how many are in the HOP team at the moment? Give us a bit of an insight into the size of the company now.
Yeah, so we've got 6 full-time staff that we employ. And other than that, we have contractors. So when we say contractors, that's normally promotional staff, which can be between about 4 to 6 each week. So those people are there on ground promoting the solution each and every day to individuals. So that's the team itself. And then I would count the core team being myself, Andrew Morello, and Stuart Cook, being the sort of board members in that sense. And other than that, we work with a whole array of different people who sort of on a daily basis are impacting the growth. So it'll be guys from Hertz, for example, people from different law firms that we deal with, accounting firms. So it ends up being a very tight-knit team. So these people aren't just there to get paid and I guess to lodge your bazzes and that sort of stuff. They're actually there at our board meetings, putting a big impact into the company. So we've created a very tight culture where everyone does have a say in the direction that we take. Even if you're an accountant, even if you're a lawyer who's just advising us, you still have a massive say in what we do and where we're heading.
Great stuff. And what do you do, Zeryab, to make sure that you enroll and inspire that team in? Because obviously this is your idea, this is your baby. You sound very passionate about it. How do you make sure that team is just as passionate?
Yeah, I think some of the things that we do is basically, it's easy to sit in a boardroom and visualize this big picture, but it's very difficult implementing it practically. So what we've done is we're on ground making things happen. So Andrew Morello rents a car, for example, and gets on the road driving and picking people up just like a hop driver would. And our other team members are on ground promoting the service just like a promo staff would, to get that true experience of how things are. So even our investors, they're on ground helping out some days just so they can experience it. So early on, we got everyone, it was all hands on deck so they could feel part of it. And when we do celebrate any pieces of news within us, everyone feels connected. So it's quite important that they feel involved, they feel impacted. And if they hear the consumer feedback firsthand, when someone says, well, that this service is absolutely amazing and they love it, we have repeat users, they need to see that so they can actually feel inspired and go on and really just inspire other people around them.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Now, you mentioned Hertz a couple of times there. Obviously, a major part of the whole Hop story here. What tell us a bit about how that came about. Did you go and approach them, or did they approach you, or did you have this dream that it's got to be a rental company? Because you talked about unused resources. How did that sort of happen?
Yeah. So my target always was that it had to be a rental company. That was the vision. Find the right rental company. I could have never imagined such an old company being involved in such an innovative project. So I did approach them, and the feedback that we've had from them is absolutely amazing. So we're in touch quite regularly. We travel between Sydney and Melbourne. They do as well. We had their vice president come down from San Francisco to talk. So they're a very nice company to deal with. They're very involved. We're very involved. And we're quite passionate about where it's heading, and we have a vision that we've set between the two companies that this is where we want to take it to, and I think their support has been quite impressive.
Yeah, great stuff. And so the way it works is, if I wanted to be a Hop driver, I can simply get a Hertz hire car and away I go.
Yeah, I mean, as a process, so you would download the app, you would sign up as a driver. We then invite over drivers for a driver session, basically, which we have on a weekly basis. We pick and choose drivers based on their driving record, driving experience, that sort of stuff. And then they get a chance to then be on the road, guaranteed income per day, and rent a car and start driving. So this is just the initial steps to ensure we get the right people involved. At the same time, we can reduce the driver's risk of being on a new platform, so we can take care of them.
Yeah.
But later on, obviously, it'll be a very automated procedure. Just download the app and start renting a car on your own terms whenever you want.
Yeah, and I guess that's fixing another problem for drivers. And like you said, they're the driving force, pardon the pun, behind any rideshare program. And I know that it can be quite onerous on a driver for one of these other rideshare companies that they have to own a modern car. But here you're taking that pain away, and the rental company is now going to be responsible for making sure the cars are newish and comply.
Absolutely. I think it is a complete offering. There's no other ride-sharing company in the world that gives you 100% of all fares. That has never happened. There is no company that uses rental cars only, where none of the assets are owned by the driver or us. That truly is efficiency. So if we're talking about a sharing economy, using an existing resource that doesn't belong to a driver, not the passenger, nor the company, is something that is very different to what people have seen. So I think that's why people like it, and that's why investors are backing it for what it is and where it's heading.
So I have to ask the question, these other rideshare companies, they charge a 20, 25, 30% or whatever it is commission, and that's how they make their money. How is Hop going to make money? Sounds like Hertz is going to get their rental fee, the driver's going to get their fee, and you're going to get nothing. How does that work?
Yeah, that's how it seems, doesn't it? So I think we take a nice cut from the rental charge that drivers pay each day. So we take a nice cut that is enough to be comparative to any other ride-sharing company in terms of margins. But yes, that's just a cut that happens on the back end. So to a driver, it seems a very seamless process, while we still end up making money from the rental charge, which is deducted from what they pay.
Yeah, and they don't have to worry about driving their own car into the ground, because I think a lot of these people now driving for these other rideshare companies have underestimated the cost of actually driving your car for so many kilometres with so many stops and starts all day. It actually can wear a car out quite quickly.
Yeah, I think just in basic numbers. So let's say 1,000 kilometres each week, 52 weeks in a year, right? 52,000 kilometres on your vehicle just in a year. We're saying the very average amount of kilometres. So that's a lot, plus the insurance cost, any accident, wear and tear, maintenance, it all adds up, and depreciation on top of that. So it's a massive cost burden, to be fair.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's alleviated through this model. Pretty forward thinking, my friend. Now, what, Zeryab, from an entrepreneurial point of view, what do you do outside of obviously working day to day in the business, making sure it's driving and these sort of things, like having a chat to me? Do you have a ritual outside of it where you're reading books, or you're going to workshops, or you're doing other things to learn? Because you must be, trying to gain this knowledge from somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's spending time with other business owners and entrepreneurs. So I get involved in different sort of judging competitions, and then that's how I sort of meet other entrepreneurs. We have a chat afterwards, share stories. You realize you're going through similar experiences, different visions, obviously. But then other than that, on a higher level, I travel quite a lot internationally. So sometimes you need to sort of disconnect and travel, but you're just trying to get more inspired. So that's what I do. So I think a week and a half ago, I was in Dubai for a week, and I was traveling a bit as well. So I think that's quite important. And even traveling on business, it's, when you're going for a business event or a business meeting overseas, it's good to then, explore the place out, really just relax and meet other people so you can understand why you're doing something like this. So it's not, for me, it's not just about running a venture or, impacting people. It's more than that. It's a long-term thing where I want to establish not just a company, but actually a method where we can have other entrepreneurs start tech companies with a less fee factor at a younger age.
Yeah, which is incredible to think. I mean, at 20, there'll be people listening to this going, well, at 20, I was still trying to work out who I was and what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And here you are onto your second venture, and it sounds pretty amazing. From a you talk globally a little bit there, and of course, Hertz is a global company. Have you got a plan to take this on a global scale? Is that where it's going to end up?
There is a very a very clear plan of where we're heading. So we know we're obviously going to be in the Australian market. Beyond that, we don't intend, the intention isn't to step into any market directly. And when I say directly, I'm being careful with the word. So we're not just going to step into a market and launch because that's being a bit foolish from our point. We're more so going to partner up with local players. That's always been the pitch from day one. And we've actually made enough moves on our end to set some KPIs and initiate those early discussions with global players. So we don't have to actually step into a market. It's more going to be of a strategic partnership, of a long-term investment on their part.
Now, and you're talking about planning. Have you got like a business plan? Have you sat down and spent a bit of time putting that together?
So I think that's one of the sort of I guess it's an understanding that has developed. It's a misunderstanding that's developed between a lot of entrepreneurs that you need a business plan. I think in this day and age, a IM presentation sort of thing with 25 slides on it is sufficient. That's how I've raised capital in the past. So 25 slides, in-depth financial plan on Excel, and I think that's all you need. So you don't need to sort of put it in words. You basically just can visualize it for people, and you can present it that way. That's just my take on it. So I've never sort of written down 5,000 words on a slide on a page, because no one's going to actually read that as an investor. You just want to present it for what it is and present them with a product, and just talk to them about it in person.
Yeah. So have you got an operational plan that do you have weekly management meetings with your board where you're going, here's where we should be, here's where we are, or anything like that? Or you just sort of driving with passion? We've added a lot of structure and systems to it. I think the most important thing I did realize is having systems and processes. So we're talking everything from the promo staff that we hire to incidents that we have to deal with. We have to have a process and system for it. So every week, for example, we know what we're going to be doing, what the in-depth plan is. Every fortnight, we plan out which spots we're going to target in Sydney in terms of where our drives will be, where we want to concentrate on demand. So we plan that out quite well. But again, that's just an operational plan, and that's quite necessary. But yeah, it's absolutely necessary for the business. Yeah. Now you mentioned a bit earlier as well, and I'm just keen to get your thoughts on this. That you don't do the things that you're not good at because it's not a good use of your time. Yet I think that's why so many business owners struggle. How did you discipline yourself so you don't go getting involved in things that you shouldn't?
Yeah, because obviously there's clearly going to be some skill sets that I don't have. I might have that skill, but it won't be my special skill, right? So it's a hard lesson to learn. Again, you can't learn it without. So if someone told me that this is what you have to stick by, right? So don't do things that you can't do, I would have basically just ignored that. I think you have to actually make a mistake to realize things sometimes, and that's what I had to do. So I realized that if I was spending so much time on doing my own finances, whilst I could use that time doing something else, that's something that had to be learned. So we don't realize that at the time. So we might say, we have to spend $10,000 to pay someone else to do something for a few months, whereas I could save that money, but that actually isn't the most efficient use of someone's time. So I'm really time conscious, as I said. So I think if something's not worth putting time into, it's best to give it to someone else so I can focus on the bigger picture where we're leading the company to.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, like you said, you might spend $10,000 over a few months paying somebody else. And I think that's the challenge for a lot of business owners. They feel like they're saving that money, but it's actually costing them something. And
Exactly.
it sounds like a lesson you've already had.
Yeah. I mean, short-term saving, long-term loss. So it's not the best thing to do.
Yeah, great stuff. Now, what does the future look like for Hop? Have you in Australia? Have you sort of got something you can share with the listeners as to where it's heading in the next sort of year or so?
Yeah, so I mean, it's going to be obviously growing in the next few months into Sydney. So we'll see a lot more of Hop branding, a lot more advertising at different spots that I guess normal people go to. Sydney Airport, those sort of partnerships start emerging. And then from there, will be obviously the national expansion into Melbourne and Brisbane. And then you'll start seeing a lot more sort of quirky projects, I would say, into experimenting in different areas in Australia. So I think there's a lot of spaces that we're quite interested in, and it's all around mobility. And you'll start seeing a lot of the things that happen in the US happen locally in Australia after so long. So I think it's a good market to be in. It's a very exciting market, and there's a lot of support from investors as well as government. So to be fair, there's just a massive amount of support.
Great stuff. Now, if I'm a driver,
Yep.
you're currently taking drivers on now. Is that what's happening?
We are, absolutely. Yep.
And as a passenger, am I able to catch a Hop yet? Is it up and running, or is it still yet to officially launch?
Yeah, it's yet to officially launch, but if you do see a Hop car, I would suggest that do approach it, talk to our staff if you see our promo staff on ground, because they're out every evening, basically, on ground with our drivers, with our team. So if you do see it at typical locations up Coogee Pavilion, for example, inner city locations, eastern suburbs. So if you spot a car there, talk to the driver, talk to the staff, and just, have a go and try it out. So once it does officially launch, you'll see a lot more, I guess, availability, but at the moment, it'll be quite exclusive and concentrated as well.
Yeah, great stuff. Now, if somebody does want to find out more, Zeryab, how do they go about finding out more?
Yep, they can head to our website, so www.myhop.io. They can head to the website, or they can just check out our Facebook page, which is just Hop. And it's very simple. Just get in touch, let us know what your thoughts are, and we can take it from there.
Well, great stuff, mate. Now, if you didn't get those links, everybody, it's Business Brain Food episode 128. So that's BBF128. If you go to businessbrainfood.com.au, you'll be able to grab those links in the show notes, along with a bit of a write-up about the show. And Zeryab himself, if you want to follow this young entrepreneur's journey, I recommend you do. It sounds like you're going places, which is kind of cool.
Thank you.
So thanks so much, mate, for coming on the show. I know you're probably busy and being pulled from pillar to post because it's pretty newsworthy stuff. This I guess disruption you're making.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think it's having the right people around you, and we're just having a bit of fun. So I think there's a huge journey to go, and we're just getting started.
Mate, well, if you can bottle a little bit of that passion and enthusiasm in you, because it's bouncing through my headphones, and you can pass that on to the people that are in your organisation, I think you're going to go a long way. So well done, mate. Well done. And once again, thanks for coming on the show. All we've got left to do is the 60-second scramble. Are you ready for that?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
All righty. This is a question I probably know the answer to already. What's the favourite app on your phone?
It has to be Hop. Yeah,
it has to be Hop, doesn't it? What's your number one tip for being more efficient?
Time management. Just manage your time well. Break it up into 15-minute gaps, and that's how you can be well at that.
Nice stuff. Do you have a hidden talent?
I can get into a deal with anyone, so I can always get a first meeting with anyone so far.
That's a pretty good talent to have in business. What's your favourite movie?
My favourite movie has to be Angels and Demons.
And what's your biggest addiction?
Biggest sweets. So I eat a lot of sweets.
A lot of sweets. That's probably why you're always so pumped. You probably need it to keep going. What's your favourite drink?
Favorite drink? It's just soft drink. I think. Probably a smoothie. Yeah, passion fruit smoothie.
A passion fruit smoothie. Nice one. What's your best way to tune out and relax? We all need to do that as entrepreneurs from time to time.
Yeah, I travel. So I travel internationally to a different country, and that's the best way I can do it. Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, there's the buzzer, mate. Thanks again so much for coming on the Business Brain Food podcast and sharing your insights. It sounds like you're on an amazing journey, one that I will follow very closely, and maybe get back on the show in a year or so, see where Hop's at.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Cheers, buddy.
Thank you. Bye.
Edutaining with Business Brain Food.
Now, if that didn't get you inspired, if you're not driven, if you're not bouncing off the ceiling, and it sounds like, if you heard in that last 60-second scramble there that his biggest addiction is sweets or lollies, no wonder he's bouncing off the ceiling. But I tell you what an amazing story. What an inspirational guy. 20 years old. I wish at 20 that I had that going on. I mean, to think that he's already had 5 years' experience in business from starting his first app. He's 20 years old, so 25% of his life has already been spent building a business, but not a corner store. Not that there's anything wrong with that. No little shop, no little business, but technology company that's helping 20,000 cabs in London, and now to go and do 2 rounds of capital raising and have some major players backing his project at 20 years old. Pretty amazing. I tell you what, it's going to be an entrepreneur to watch. I'm sure that you're going to see him in 10 years' time. He's going to be one of Australia's top entrepreneurs, without a doubt, just with that sort of energy and passion and that motivation. It'll be interesting to see. And it just goes to show that some people do just come out of the womb with this energy and the insights to go and be entrepreneurial. So good on you, Zeryab. It was an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and I know that everybody would have got a lot out of that. All right. Now, if you are enjoying the podcast, please head into the iTunes store, leave an honest review or rating. Would love to hear from you. Of course, you can head to businessbrainfood.com.au and listen to all the past episodes. Jump on there, our brand new site. Check it out. Tell me what you think. Love your feedback. But it's a website that is dedicated to the podcast. Now, on that note, talk about being dedicated. One of the things I'm dedicated to personally is reducing the fatality rate of Aussie businesses. And the way I do that is I have another business called MaxMyProfit. And what we do is we help you maximize your profitability, because a lot of people go into business with all sorts of dreams, goals, and ambitions, but 9 out of 10 still fail in the first 5 years. Nobody ever decides they're going to do that when they start their business. In fact, if I asked you why you started your business, I'm sure it's not because you wanted to fail in the first 5 years. It's because you wanted more time, more money, more freedom, be your own boss, all that stuff, right? All that stuff that typically most business owners don't achieve. At MaxMyProfit, what we're about is helping you understand the 5 stages of business growth and taking you step by step through implementing the things that need to be implemented and making sure your mindset is right to be successful. And we have an acceleration blueprint that we use, and I have a team of accelerators, business accelerators that work with you one-on-one to help you make that happen. Our programs start at just $10 a day. That's like less than a hamburger and a Coke. So it's affordable for just about anybody. I mean, let's face it, everybody has $10 a day. So if you are keen on finding out more, head across to our website, maxmyprofit.com.au. There's a bunch of freebies on there. You can come to an event. You can register yourself for a business assessment. You can download a business planning template. Whatever it is that you feel you need or where you're at, head across to the website, maxmyprofit.com.au. Check it out. Also, a huge amount of resources on there. Go to our library and you'll find our library is jam-packed with free resources you don't even have to opt in for. You can just scroll through at your leisure, learn as much as you need to learn. There's videos, there's articles, there's all sorts of great bits and pieces, and it's free. Don't even have to opt in. We're not even going to ask you for your email address. Head across there, check it out, maxmyprofit.com.au. Alrighty, well, that's enough from me. I think, hopefully you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy these diving deep with the entrepreneurs. I think it's a really great way to learn about what people are thinking and what they're going through and the frustrations they have, the successes they have, and what it is that drives them. And I think as business owners, it can be lonely. It can be lonely, and hearing that other people are going through the same things. Even young Zeryab, saying it's frustrating and slow and time's important, all of those things. So sometimes it is about hearing other people's stories so we can then take what we need to take, the lessons, and then move forward ourselves, take our business to the next level. Once again, thanks for tuning in. Been my absolute pleasure to have you on board this week. Take care. Until next time, have a profitable day.
You can fly higher than the sky, shine brighter than the stars. You can have all you ever wanted.
The Business Brain Food Podcast is brought to you by maxmyprofit.com.au.